Fish and Chums!
Hi everybody, old Gary Heydrich here for Fish and Chums Fishing Report for the big weekend, Memorial Weekend. Wow, it's going to be a big weekend. My old buddy Tuffy here, my fishing friend, and we have some good photos to show you this week, guys. I'm talking about monster fish, the 20th anniversary. I tell you what, the guy's name was Ken Pauley, fishing out of Elk City, Kansas reservoir, using a Zebco 33. A Zebco 33. Now the Zebco 33 has got gazillions of fish, but they're not made for 100-pound plus fish. But he was using a crappie minnow and a minnow, just a jigging minnow, I should say, and hooked onto this fish, and he landed it, 123-pound catfish. Now this, folks, was 20 years ago. This was the 20th anniversary, but I just had to show you this picture. I want to thank Dan Huff from out at Truman Lake, our buddy out there, and for sharing this photo with us. Wow, what a giant fish. And 123 pounds. Woo, wow. Okay, now later in the program, I'm going to tease you a little bit because I've got that photo of that 5-pound crappie caught last week. Wow, wow. Well, okay, I've been fishing at Table Rock a little bit this week, and there's a variety of things happening right now. I want to thank my friend Marla coming in from Arizona and fished for the first time out here. Really hasn't fished much, but she loves fishing, I can tell that. And we went out the other day and caught a few fish, and gosh, we had fun. But I tell you, that water temperature was 74 degrees when we started. And by the time we left in the early afternoon, 78 degrees. So that, I tell you, with this heat and humidity, that water temperature is really rising a little bit too fast for me. And so the fish are really reacting. The bass are moving out of the pockets. They're going to deeper water. So if you're going bass fishing this weekend, there's a couple things you really need to do. One is have some topwater baits at your fingertips, because the topwater bite has been good in the morning. And throughout the day, you never know when the bass will be pushing up shad to the surface. So be sure to have your favorite topwater bait. I talked about 6 different guys that use half a dozen, 4 or 5 different baits. So they're all working. So get out there this weekend and try to catch some topwater fish. That's always a lot of fun. And, you know, as I mentioned last week, if you have a blow up and you miss it, be sure to have another, like a spinning reel, rigged up with this little swim bait and the spinner, the bottom spinner. And I tell you what, that really pays off at times, because if you miss that topwater bite, throw that out, count it down to about 6 or 7 or 8, swim it back slow with that bottom spinner. Whew, you probably catch that fish. So topwater fishing is good for the upcoming weekend at Table Rock. By the way, there's just been some good Carolina rigging taking place. I talked about this last week, because these fish are moving out of the pockets and the creek arms. So don't overlook the Carolina rig with your favorite bait. And also, if it's going to get real quiet, you know, and no wind, go to the Ned rig. The Ned rig will pay off for you, I promise. Went down, bud? Okay. Especially if it's real quiet, no wind, and a lot of lake traffic. When the conditions are tough, the best bait you can fish with out of Table Rock is the Ned rig. Don't overlook this. And they've been using some swim baits. Black and blue jigs have been working, some around the docks in the shade. And so you might want to try some of these. You know, I was talking to my buddy Catfish Rick. He's up the James River, been up there about 5 weeks camping. And the catfishing has really been good. He and his buddies have been catching a lot of cats, setting lines. And it seems like perch has been the best bait. They've been picking up some fish on cut shad too, but perch is overall the best bait. But what I wanted to bring up is he and his buddies have really been catching a lot of white bass up the James River. A lot of shad back up in these arms, in these big pockets, these big coves, and they've been trolling mainly flicker minnows. And boy, they've been catching a lot of male fish. You know, you take a male white bass 3/4 to a pound, that is some pretty good eating. But now, the last few days, the big female fish, the bigger ones, have moved up. And they're not as good eating. I don't like to eat those, but boy, they're fun to catch, that's for sure. So white bass fishing up in the pockets with the shad, you're going to catch some white bass. And by the way, up the James, if you have the water's a little off color, what I found out the other day is that the lake is really green. You know what causes that? There's been a lot of pollen. and a lot of trees pollinating, and that's when you have a rain that washes that into the water. So the lake is real green, and a lot of pollen on the surface. So that's one factor you're going to have to work with. But anyway, Table Rock, when it's windy, spinner baits have been working, especially up the James, topwater baits. Hey, looks good for the upcoming weekend. Crappie have slowed down a little bit. They're still picking up some crappie at Table Rock on the docks, around the docks. Also the brush piles, trying about 12, 15, 18 feet of water. You might pick yourself up some good crappie. Let's go over to Lake Taneycomo now. Lake Taneycomo, I talked about this a couple of weeks ago when they had the water, the gates open at Table Rock. A lot of shad were coming through. Now they're not running any water over the gates right now, but they are generating water. But what's happened, that's brought a lot of shad into Taneycomo, and the trout are chumming up. They're biting on that shad. So white jigs have been working. I mentioned this last week. Use like a 16th ounce white jig. Cast that out and work it in slow. Now, Dwayne, look at Dwayne out at Lily's Landing the other day, just fishing off the dock and using a white jig, and picked up a 17-pound plus brown trout. Look at this photo. Boy, that's a big old fish, Dwayne. Congratulations. And there's been several nice trout caught off the docks. So swim those white jigs. Also, not only the white jigs, but they're using spoons, the little Cleo spoons. I like personally the silver Cleo with the blue stripe. But the other day, the silver with the kind of an orange stripe or red was working. So check this out. And they've been picking up some good trout also on that Berkeley trout worm, that pink trout worm, and put a float up above it. That will pay off for you as well. So Taneycomo looks good for the upcoming weekend. Congratulations, Dwayne. That was one big old brown trout. That had to be a ball bringing that rascal in. Out at Shoals Lake, they've been picking up, the lake's high. It's in a new brush. They've been picking up fish on a variety of bait, throwing jigs up in the new brush area, and jigging that's been working. Also had a buddy out there picked up 3 good fish the other day, just using like a 6-inch plastic worm, Texas style, Texas rig, pitching it up in the brush and working it. So they've been picking up fish on swim baits, Carolina rigs, as the bass are moving out of these big pockets like Table Rock. So the Carolina rigs have been working, and jigging, throwing some football jigs up around the shaded dock areas has been paying off as well. Umbrella rigs pick up a few fish out there too. So Bull Shoals looks good. Crappie for bass, but crappie are moving out a little bit. Just like Table Rock, try the brush piles and try around the docks. Could pick yourself up some nice crappie. By the way, they've been picking up some walleye in that new brush area too, while bass fishing. And so just get out there and don't be surprised if you pick up a walleye. They're back in there with those shad, and some nice walleye been caught at Bull Shoals this week. Let's go over to Stockton Lake. Well, Stockton, the crappie spawn's over. So the crappie are moving off the bank, getting in the brush pile. Some people are using an electric motor and just kind of semi-trolling over some of the brush piles, picking up fish. Other people are getting right in that brush pile in 15, 18 feet of water. Jigs or jigging minnows picking up crappie. They're still catching crappie there, and there's some real nice fish have been caught this last few days. Now, if you want to go somewhere and just go walleye fishing for the upcoming weekend, I tell you what, go to Stockton. Get up early in the morning, fish late in the evening, and try it throughout the day. But the point fishing at Stockton's been good with jig and night crawlers. If there's a little bit of wind, go to the 1/8 ounce with a night crawler. If not, just go to the 16th ounce, just a crappie jig. You don't have to use that whole night crawler. Yeah, just use a third of it or a half of it. Hook it on that jig. Use your electric motor, start out shallow, and work down that point, or go from one side of the point to the other side. I think you're going to catch some nice walleye at Stockton this weekend. It's always good for a walleye in Stockton and Memorial Weekend. Get out there and try it. Okay, let's go over at Truman Lake. You know I love to show pictures of young kids with fish. Look at this young lady, Cabe's daughter. They were out the other day at Truman. Look at this, 2 beautiful, beautiful crappie with a beautiful young lady. Boy, look at that smile. Wow, she's going to be a fishing gal the rest of her life, that's for sure. Now the crappie are pretty well done spawning at Truman. They're moving off the banks, and you know I used to guide, lived at Truman, and I love this time of the year. I would fish the cedar trees. Get right in there and fish those cedar trees with a jig. Oh, I've caught a lot of fish by doing that. Try that this weekend. Few fish have been caught over the sunken brush, of course, the brush piles, and even some pole timber. But that cedar tree fishing should be good for crappie for the upcoming weekend. Big cats have been caught. They've been using cut shad, and if you can get a hold of some perch, small perch, boy, that's a good bait as well. And the white bass fishing's been pretty good, and the hybrid fishing at Truman as well. So off some of the points and back to some of the pockets. Few fish have been caught below the dam. Some walleye caught the last few evenings. Might want to check this out below the dam at Truman. Wrapping it up, the Lake of the Ozarks, the spawn's pretty well over. The bass, or the crappie, excuse me, are coming off the bank, and you might want to try those brush piles in about 8 to 12, 15 feet of water. That's about a big show for the day. Now I'm going to show you this big crappie. Big crappie. This gentleman, in fact, I got his name right here. Don't want to get it wrong. Jim Ferguson. I used to know Jim Ferguson over at Truman. Jim Ferguson, this young man caught a 5-pound, 4-ounce black crappie the other day in Tennessee. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up, because the old record was right here in Missouri. But he was fishing the other day in a private lake and caught this 5-pound, 4-ounce crappie, a pending world record. The old record of 5 pounds even in a Missouri farm pond. Wow, what a fish. 5-pounder. Woo-wee, that's a giant. Good going, Jim Ferguson. Okay, I want to thank you very much for being with us. You know our show, we like to talk about crappie and white bass and walleye and bass, smallmouth bass, we all. So be sure to like and share. If you have any friends that might like this show, share it with them, and hopefully they'll join us. And if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe. It's absolutely free. Just push that subscribe button, and we'd love to have you join us. Be a fishing chum with us, okay? And be sure to like and share it. But also, if you have any photos or any information, email us at fishingchums@gmail.com. Going to be a busy weekend, guys. Get out and make the best of it. Go out and get bit. Thanks for fishing with me this week, Marley. Love you. Happy outdoors, everyone. Go out and get bit.